Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Daily
Another
Thread.
day, another week.
Yes, good to be back with you. We got a whole plethora of stories to tackle on this. Yeah, you like that word, plethora? Plethora?
Either way, I
Plethora?
think the pronunciation
Either way.
is good. Before we jump into things that have been happening over the weekend, number one, we should say that let's start with the weather report because you're in New York and I'm still in
Yeah.
Florida for a few days. It was freezing. I never experienced in 40 years, maybe more. I never experienced such cold weather like down here this past Shabbos. It
Really?
was 39 degrees.
I mean, you never experienced that cold weather in Florida. You have experienced colder in New York, just not in Florida.
Of course, the point I'm trying to make is that I have a thermostat that never moved off cool. It says heat. It says heat on the thermostat. And I thought to myself, what does anybody need heat on their thermostat in Florida for? But
You never know.
I started playing around with it when I saw the weather forecast. I started playing around with it on Thursday last week. And the first thing it did, it's probably the first time it was turned on in 5 years. So I put the heat on first. It smelled like someone was barbecuing. It smelled like they were barbecuing the entire house. But after that aroma of something burning kind of dissipated, after the barbecue odor dissipated, it stopped making that. It stopped generating that aroma, that odor, and just it warmed the place up. And I can tell you now, we have good heat in this house, aside from good air conditioning, and that's important.
Amazing.
And I don't have I didn't come down here with a warm jacket or anything. Had to improvise. I could have bought a winter coat.
So today is Martin Luther King birthday. Is there free parking today here? I don't know. I didn't pay the meter.
No, it's a federal holiday. It's many years. It took a lot of time, I think, for it to gain national traction because it's complicated when the government legislates to add new holidays. We're just not used to it. We know we have Labor Day and Memorial Day and Christmas and New Year's, and you know what? We just need to be accumulating a lot of holidays. And
nobody's complaining.
Gives people a reason to be off. Listen, Martin Luther King was a great leader, and could use a man like that today, especially in these difficult times where racial tension is, for some reason, as high as it ever was. It really shouldn't be. And he just wanted people to get along. And, he had his great speech of I Had a Dream. He said that he dreams of the day when his children will be judged by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. And so that was a visionary. That was a man that was a visionary. He had the right idea. And he's idolized by a great deal of America, especially by African Americans. But I think the message that he tried to communicate needs to be internalized, I think, more effectively. That's just my opinion.
Absolutely. And that it goes across the board, not just with race, with everything. People should be judged by the content of their character and nothing else.
Yes,
not their abilities or disabilities or anything.
That would be a great accomplishment if society could agree on that. And listen, we had a crazy weekend of news with the discovery of classified documents in Joe Biden's garage in Delaware.
Is that a big deal? I feel like every president has that ultimately.
Well, it was a big deal up until after Donald Trump. All of a sudden, we got to Joe Biden, and hold your horses. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal. These are national security secrets, okay? That if they're shared by our enemies or with our enemies, is a serious crime, and it could jeopardize the security of the country. What's not a big deal about that?
I mean, it's from, 10 years ago?
I don't know. That makes it worse. It's been laying around his garage, which he says is secure, but there's videos of him backing his car into his garage, and the garage door's wide open, and everyone can see everyone can see a pile of junk. And
So what's going to happen? It's like, so what are we hoping is going to happen?
It's very complicated, Nafi. It's a very complicated issue. has extreme political overtones to it. It has serious violations of the law. People are sitting in jail for mishandling top secret documentation. People that you don't know, people that used to work for government and happen to take some stuff home with them, maybe even unintentionally, maybe even inadvertently, but they get fined, they lose their jobs, and in some cases they go to prison. It's a serious thing.
No, I totally hear you. Well, yeah, that's a story that's probably going to get swallowed up. It's probably going to get suppressed because the media doesn't like going after Joe. A story, though, that I see on Yeshiva World is, which I wasn't aware of, is Hamas published a video of an Israeli captive.
Yeah, I saw that.
As a message to the new IDF chief of staff. His name is Avera Mengistu, who was captured by Hamas in 2014. Mm-hmm. So Hamas still has him
in prison.
He crossed into the Gaza Strip, and they still have him in prison. Right. The video published only hours after the handover ceremony for Israel's new IDF chief of staff began opens with words. The Iz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades emphasized the failure of the outgoing chief of staff Kochavi and his lies to his nation and government in his imaginary and delusional achievements. The incoming chief of staff, Halevi, needs to prepare himself to bear responsibility for this failure and its consequences. In the video, the prisoner Avera says, "I am Avera Mengistu. I'm the prisoner. Until when will I be here? My friends and I are in captivity for long and painful years. Where is the state of Am Yisrael regarding our fate?" Now, again, I did not know about this. I did not know that Hamas is holding on to, it sounds like, more than one IDF soldier captive for the last 10 years.
I don't think he's a soldier. I don't think he's a soldier. And if I remember correctly, I think he voluntarily crossed into Gaza. He wasn't kidnapped. He was, I think, according to the reports that I read a while ago, he's had some kind of a mental imbalance, imbalance type of emotional problems in his history.
Oh, okay.
And he crossed over, unfortunately, and he was captured, and he's an Israeli citizen. And I believe he's originally from Ethiopia. And, Hamas plays with these games like they play, some people play with a yo-yo. They play with people's lives. Holding the bodies of two Israeli soldiers also from 2014.
Really?
Yes. And like we mentioned last week or the week before, I mean, the families are campaigning tirelessly. They want to give their children who were killed in the Gaza War of 2014, they want to give them Jewish funeral in Israel. They don't want them sitting wherever Hamas has them stored somewhere in Gaza. But anyway, additionally, interestingly enough, there's a lot going on in Israel too. For instance, Prime Minister Netanyahu said yesterday that if Israel is abandoned by the U.S. and the Europeans in terms of keeping control over Iran, Israel will not hesitate to bomb the nuclear facilities in Iran. Okay?
Can I ask a silly question? Sure. Why don't they bomb it already?
Well, listen, nothing happens in a vacuum. There's repercussions for things that happen. It has to be carefully calculated what the repercussions are going to be. People say, especially when they're firing missiles from Gaza into Israel, people say, oh, why doesn't Israel just send troops into Gaza and take over Gaza? That's great on day one, and they take over Gaza. What happens the next day? On the next day, all of a sudden, you're responsible for the lives of 2 million people. You got to make sure they're eating. You got to make sure they have a place to live. You got to make sure they have education. Who wants to undertake that kind of burden?
Yeah, but let me ask you a question. I mean, in 2007, 2005, when Israel expelled tens of thousands of Jews out of Gush Katif, they had to go ahead and be responsible for them and all of that. And that was why?
Well, listen, it's a different dynamic. And the world didn't pressure Israel to care for their own people. As a matter of fact, they encouraged them to evacuate Gush Katif and hand it over to Hamas, to the Palestinians.
That was a really big mistake in
Yes,
hindsight.
it was a big mistake.
I mean, not even. I mean, I think it was a huge mistake to leave Gush Katif, and now we have to deal with what? How many Arabs are there in Gaza right now?
I don't know, 1.5 million, 2 million maybe.
Yeah, it's too late to do anything about that, to be honest.
Of course, you can't do anything about that. I mean,
where they all come from? Where'd all these Arabs come from?
Listen, this goes back 75 years or 100 years. They are an indigenous population in that area in the Middle East. There's 100 million Arabs in the Middle East, Nachi.
I know, but my question to you is, in 2005, where were these Arabs? They were in other parts of the Middle East, and now they all descended upon Gaza.
Well, they there's a lot of things moved around. For example, there was no Jordan before 1948. Jordan was just a tribal type of territory in the Middle East, and the United Nations created Jordan. A lot of countries in the Middle East that are Arab countries today are made up of tribes that go back hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. Things are very tribal.
Right.
A bad example is we're reading about in the Torah about the Shvatim. They're very different. Reuven was different than Shimon. Shimon was different than Levi. Yisachar was different than Zvulun, and so on and so forth. They have different lifestyles, different priorities. I don't want to make a comparison between that, but it's a big mess. The Arab world,
right.
but it's very tribal, and.
Our next story is from via JNS, and the headline reads: a German court wants to COVID vaccinate a Holocaust survivor against her will.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is Ina Zivan. I'm going to botch this last name. Ina Zivanetskaya. She's 85 years old. And it was first reported by Report 24 from Australia that she will be sent against her will to the doctor who will double vaccinate her against her will. People are not so happy about this. The facts seem unbelievable because Germany has really learned nothing at all from history. An exclusive video shows she's neither of unsound mind nor endangering herself or others. She's just afraid for her life. She's turning 86, and she was born in Ukraine in 1937.
So they're going to force her to be vaccinated?
That's what it seems like. That's what they're trying to do.
In Germany, you said?
Yeah.
And everybody in Germany is 100%, vaccinations in the population. I don't know. I saw a story yesterday.
Strange story.
I saw a story yesterday that says that a doctor who's very active and very widely quoted about the COVID outbreak, the pandemic, said that the new variant, IB15.5, I don't know what it's called, that if you were vaccinated, it's more likely you're going to get the new variant than if you're not vaccinated. So what we need to happen to get things clarified in this country and in the world is for the House of Representatives and the various committees to begin oversight investigations. Have to get Anthony Fauci in front of a panel and swear him in, so he hopefully will tell the truth to the best ability that he can tell the truth. And we have to find out what the real background is and what happened here.
Right.
And
our next,
a great deal of it is about, we're going to find out at the end of the day, to jump ahead, a great deal of it was the fact that billions of dollars were made vaccinating people. And that's what we're going to find out, I think.
I guess we'll see. Our next story, which is almost ended in tragedy. I do want to mention that in Nepal, there was a plane that crashed that claimed the lives of 72 people, I believe. Right. There's a frightening video of one of the passengers on the plane was live on Facebook when the plane went up in flames in the middle of the air and then it ended up crashing to the ground. And an awful scene. But at JFK on Shabbos on 8:45 p.m. on Friday, there was a Delta Airlines flight that was heading down the runway to take off, and there was an American Airlines flight that was taxiing across over the same runway. And you can hear the recording of the air traffic control seeing this unfold, and then very, very urgently telling the Delta plane to abort their takeoff. And a Delta plane, which was going 150 miles per hour at the time of that call, ended up stopping short just 1,000 feet from the American Airlines aircraft. So that Delta plane 1943 returned to the gate. They got all the passengers off of the plane, and they rescheduled the flight for the next day, and they gave free hotel stays. I'm not sure why they needed to do that. I'm guessing because there was an investigation that took place. I did hear on the recording that they reached out to the pilot of American Airlines, and they said, we have a pilot deviation. You need to call this number. I'm guessing they're going to be in trouble because they were supposed to cross runway 4, and they crossed runway 31 instead, which almost caused a tragedy that would have claimed the lives of hundreds of people.
Well, when you were very young, you had an obsession with control towers and planes taking off. If you remember, it used to, your computer to
a flight simulator
to simulate takeoffs and landings, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you something funny. I ate by one of my wife's relatives, and in their backyard, you have a view of JFK.
Yeah.
And you see planes just taking off and landing. It's the coolest thing. But this is a scary story. This doesn't happen often. Usually, something that I did see by when I was looking at the airport, at the runways, is that like the precision in which things are done. You have planes taking off and landing from the same runways every 3 minutes, and it's shocking that something like this doesn't happen more often. But they're able to avert a tragedy here. It would have been really tragic. And I'm guessing there are going to be some people who are going to have to pay a price for a close call like this.
Well, air traffic controllers are very, very carefully trained. I know a guy that works for me now, actually, who trained as an air traffic controller. He is in charge of our weekly circulation of the newspaper. And he went down to Louisiana for 3 months to train at they trained him at a not such a busy airport. And he really applied. He lives in New York. He lives on Long Island, actually. And he wanted to come back and work either at LaGuardia or JFK or Newark, but they wouldn't bring him up here because they wanted him. There's a lot of quiet airports, When we fly down here, we fly into Palm Beach Airport, PBI.
Very quiet.
It's no comparison to Miami or Fort Lauderdale or Kennedy. It's like flying into your own little private airport most of the time.
Yeah. Another story which sort of touches the sports activity for yesterday is obviously if you're a New Yorker and you're a Giant fan, it's an exciting time because the New York Giants are advancing to the divisional round after beating the Minnesota Vikings in a close game. But I want to pinpoint a story that happened over the weekend in sports. On Motzei Shabbos, there's a game between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers went up 27-0, and I believe that was a score, maybe 27-3 by halftime. And one sports bettor put in a bet of $1.4 million that the Jaguars were going to win the game. Yeah. Now, the odds are not good. The bet would have won him $11,000, so he would have gotten his principal back. He bet $1.4 million to win. Obviously, he'll get his 1.4, but he'll net $11,000 profit. He figured, you know what, this is going to hit. They're up 27-0. It's the easiest $11,000 I'll make. But what happened? What happened is that the Jacksonville Jaguars came back and they won the game 31-30. And this bettor lost $1.4 million to just win $11,000. And probably one of the most, first of all, one of the biggest sports comebacks in the NFL playoffs, but probably one of the worst sports betting losses you'll hear about. That is, I don't know what that person's feeling like now. That's rough.
There's also a guy that won the lottery this weekend, $1.3 billion. I don't know.
In Maine, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And
It's always Maine. It's always Maine.
it's always Maine.
It's always
Why?
there. It's
Somebody
always.
that's stuck across the border from Canada, not even an American citizen, just walked across the border.
Whoa.
I'm just asking.
Is that what
No, I
happened?
don't know. I'm just
No.
asking. Why does it always happen to
I
Maine?
don't think
Why does
so.
this happen to Maine?
I don't know. It's always like these random bodegas that sell the winning ticket. Just that's what
But
happens.
Bodegas make a lot of money too when they win. I think they get like a 1% bonus.
Do
I
they?
think so.
No way.
Yeah,
Seriously?
maybe. They get a
Interesting.
small percentage of the winnings when there's a big win.
Did not know that.
Okay,
Did not know that. What else
let
you
me say
got?
one more thing here. Let me say two more short things. Number one is, again, from Israel, Netanyahu predicts a massive rise in immigration from the U.S. Okay, how do you like that? He says
People making Aliyah?
Israel will experience a massive increase in immigration from Western countries, the United States included, according to Prime Minister Netanyahu. He announced that yesterday at the weekly cabinet meeting in Jerusalem. According to a report in Israel Hayom, during the course of Sunday's weekly cabinet meeting, the Prime Minister predicted that Israel's economic growth will surpass that of the United States, coupled with Israel's entry into the U.S. visa waiver program. The Jewish state strengthening economy will attract significant more American Jewish immigrants. So he's expecting a large wave of Aliyah in the next couple of years. So there's been record numbers of Aliyah, basically also motivated by COVID. People have had it. If you're born Jewish, you could become an Israeli citizen without moving to Israel. You can go to your local Israeli consulate. If you live in New York, you can go to Manhattan, to Second Avenue, where the consulate is. And by virtue of the fact that you were born Jewish, and you could prove that your mother is Jewish, you are entitled to Israeli citizenship, and you become an Israeli citizen. And I met somebody this weekend that actually did that. You know why they did that? Because they have a kid that lives in Israel, number one, and they don't want to get stuck again if there's a pandemic. Like they were denying people, Americans especially, they were denying people the right to go to Israel to visit family. People couldn't go to weddings. People couldn't go to bar mitzvahs. People couldn't go to funerals. People couldn't go to prison because they weren't Israeli citizens. But
so why don't we become Israeli citizens?
Well, I'm gonna when I get back. It's not the first thing I'm gonna do, but it's on the list of the top 100 things that I think I'm gonna do.
What? Why? Like, is there a downside? Is there something I'm missing?
No. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if you're very young, you have a military obligation. That's possible. But I'm not talking about 18-year-old people do it. I think 18-year-old and 20-year-old and 30-year-old people that make Aliyah through Nefesh B'Nefesh or through some other way, they do want to serve in the military. That's why that's part of their. But if you're over 50, for example, and you want to become an Israeli citizen because you don't want to be locked out next time there's a pandemic. Hopefully, there won't be a situation like that again, or if there is, we'll learn how to deal with it differently. But as a Jew, you have certain rights to Eretz Yisrael. And that shouldn't be.
Yeah, well, let me ask you. I mean, but if like I'm in my 20s and I get that citizenship, then I can't go to Israel without having to be, I guess, in the military in some capacity.
That has to be investigated. Maybe we'll get you a meaningful minute exemption from the military. Because you explain to them you're already serving. You're already serving the nation of Israel. So you maybe.
I mean, Tzivos Hashem. Tzivos Hashem.
Maybe you should be exempt. So there's one more thing. Let me bring up the interesting thing that I saw this morning in this week's Parsha, which we're going to read next Shabbos, Parshas Ve'era, where it talks about Shidduchim. Not Shidduchim in the conventional sense, not Shidduchim like when Yitzchak met Rivka and Eliezer, was the Shatkin and so on and so forth. But parenthetically, in the drama of Moshe Rabbeinu being introduced to Klal Yisrael and being told that he's going to bring Bnei Yisrael out of Egypt, out of Mitzrayim, it says Vayikach Aaron. It says who married who. It says that Aaron married Elisheva, Bas Aminadav, and she was the sister of Nachshon ben Aminadav. Everybody knows who Nachshon ben Aminadav is. He's the guy that was the
Of
first one
course.
into the Yam Suf, and he went up to his neck until the sea split, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so that was Nachshon ben. So Aaron married Elisheva, Bas Aminadav, the sister of, like I said, Nachshon, and Aaron had four sons, right? He had Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, and Isamar, four sons. Okay, so telling us who married who? What do we have to know? What the names of their sons are? So Rashi says that from here we learn that when one is looking for a shidduch, one is thinking about taking a wife, he has to investigate her brothers. That's all I wanted to say. Just wanted to make that observation.
So you're saying that's okay. That references you have to look into the family. That's our raya.
The brothers. That's what Rashi says. Rashi says someone's writing a shidduch, you have to know who's the girl's brothers. That's all. Rashi says it.
Yeah.
Rashi says it. I don't know. You want to look into the uncles and the aunts and the business and where they live and how long they lived there and how many bathrooms they have in the house. That's not required according to the Torah. But according to Rashi, you should look into the brothers. So I rest my case.
Okay. Yeah, one last thing I want to say. I read an article in Mishpacha over Shabbos. It's something that jumped out at me. I was reading about Argentina in the 50s, how many Nazis they sort of harbored because they had just discovered a submarine off the coast of Argentina that they believe was a way that they were getting Nazis from Germany to Argentina. And it kind of doesn't sit well with me or sit easy with me, the fact that you had Eichmann and Mengele, Yamach Shema, that they were able to escape Germany. They were able to escape and go be harbored in Argentina. And there's one person who was quoted in this article. I guess it's a conspiracy theory, that he said that the Hitler killing himself in the Berlin bunker didn't happen. He said that Hitler also had escaped to Germany, to Argentina, and he was killed in 1972. That obviously is disproven, or it's not. I don't. The main story about Hitler that we know is that he killed himself in Berlin. But the fact that like Eichmann, Mengele, the worst people, a couple of the worst people in the world to ever live, were able to escape and assume new identities and live new lives in Argentina. They do say there may have been some United States cooperation or knowing about them, because I think at that time there was the war with the Soviets, and the U.S. wanted to use the Nazi scientists and the Nazi brains that they had to fight against the Russians. So it's a little problematic, no? It rubs me the wrong way.
First of all, Eichmann was captured by Israel and brought on trial to Israel.
Yeah, the Mossad.
And he eventually
him.
was hung in Israel. I once met the man who captured him in Argentina.
Really?
His name was Issa Harel. Okay, and he'll tell you just a story, then we'll let you go. But I met him decades ago, and of course he was heading up a group that was traveling to Argentina. Movies have been made about it. And Issa Harel was, of course, with the Mossad, but he was traveling on a false identity, like everybody else, right? So let's say he had the name. Let's say he was traveling on the name. Just as an example, let's say he had the name Israel Schwartz. Okay, so that's what his passport was. That's what his papers were. He was on the plane, flying from wherever he was flying from to Argentina. I'm sure it wasn't from Israel to Argentina. I'm sure it was from a different country. And they announced on the plane, will Aaron Schwartz please come up to see the flight attendant? Okay. And he thought to himself, why do they want to see me? Is my identity blown? Am I not undercover anymore? He froze in his seat. He didn't react. Turns out there was another Aaron Schwartz on the plane, and they were calling him up there. So his cover wasn't blown, and he was able to continue on to Argentina and finish his mission and bring Eichmann to justice.
It's crazy that I didn't know Argentina was such a anti-Semitic country, or such a disgusting country, that they're taking such awful people and hide them.
They're hiding the the ancestors of these families are all over the world. I think,
You
not
think
just in
so?
Argentina. I think they're all over. I think they're all over. I think some of them are even upstate New York in the Catskills, as I mentioned to you once. And in
Really?
Hurleyville, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe we'll discuss that further a different time. But that's our episode for today,
Yes,
Monday, January 16th. Wishing you all a beautiful day, and we'll speak to you all tomorrow.
okay, have a great day, everybody. Go to